Ah, yes, it is that time once again. Episode 37 of Double Coverage Sports Talk. A very special episode for a couple of reasons as we just jump right into it. I'm Mitch Mason alongside Luke Heaton as Dalton is back there playing with the cameras. Thank you, Dalton. So first, this is our final episode, at least for the foreseeable future, in the TexAg studios. They've been more than generous to allow us to use these studios and rent-free, you might say. So we are thankful to that. But graduation coming up. I start my full-time employment in 19 days, a whoop.
Gosh.
So that being said, I will be out of College Station. Luke is going to work in sports ministry up in Charlotte. So we will be continuing the podcast like through another form.
We'll
right?
have other technological advances.
Yeah,
ready.
I haven't had enough time to sit down and do it, but once I'm back in Dallas and have my desktop ready, I'll be able to run all that software. So double coverage will continue, but that's just the first part of this. The other part of this is we have maybe our biggest interview on the show today. We have former Texas A&M quarterback, former Dallas Cowboys quarterback, Stephen McGee coming on later in the show. You're going to want to make sure that you stick around for that, as we've got the draft to run down with Steven, and then we've also got some questions just about his personal life, about his faith to go through as well. So a really, really big episode here for Double Coverage Sports Talk. And Luke, I mean, this has been quite a run that we've had over the last, year and a half, I guess, of doing this. How does it all kind of feel to be nearing the home stretch as far as us in person?
It's been, we both had individual solo podcasts over a year ago, and then you came to me and was like, hey, why don't we do one together? And I was like, that's a great idea. And we went from recording in your room to
very tight space.
Yeah, to now we've been blessed to have the TexAg studio. It's been awesome to see how the show's grown. Yeah. And obviously we love sportsing, we love talking about our faith, so it's just been awesome just trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, agreed. I cannot think of a better way to have spent my time over the last year and change than
I'm trying not to tear up in the
recording a
studio right now
podcast with you. But we want to get right into it. We have basically 15 minutes before we want to bring Steven on and have him be kind of the bulk of the podcast. But in this little bit, I wanted to talk about the draft. We just had that this past weekend. Get some NBA quick hits from you as well, and then talk a little Dallas Stars hockey. They're down in the playoff series right now, 2-1. The Stars really, really need a Game 4 win tonight, as Dalton can absolutely confirm. But first, let's start with the 2019 NFL Draft. Kyler Murray goes number 1 overall. We had that big discussion last week. I would not have done what the Cardinals did, take Kyler Murray, then trade Josh Rosen for really chump change to Miami. It did happen, though. What are your thoughts on Kyler?
You know, this is the guy that Cliff Kingsbury wanted. And I kind of relate it to when a new coach comes on board at a university. It's like, for example, obviously close to home here at A&M, Buzz Williams comes in. None of these players are guaranteed a spot on the team. Buzz Williams can come in and clean house, assistants, players, whatever he wants to do, and make it his own team. And that's what Cliff Kingsbury has done. He did not draft Josh Rosen. That was not his quarterback. He wanted Kyler Murray, and he went for it. So, look, if Kyler Murray's your guy, then by all means, go get him.
Yeah.
Now, there's questions because you have a potential franchise quarterback in Josh Rosen, and you haven't got to see what he can turn into, and you can never grade a guy's future career on his rookie season on an atrocious team.
Right.
I mean, that would be unfair to do. Some of the greatest quarterbacks had horrible rookie years, and I brought this up before. Peyton Manning threw interceptions like anyone else. He threw an unbelievable amount of interceptions because his team was bad, and he was a rookie. But you know what? I'll say this about Kyler Murray. He's small, but man, is he accurate, and he's mobile. And with kind of the new age NFL offense that Cliff Kingsbury is going to run in Arizona, they've got some fast weapons, and they've got a quarterback that can make plays, and it should be exciting.
Yeah,
There's definitely going to be some growing pains. I mean, don't expect Kyler Murray to go in there and to just be a phenom right off the bat, because the jump from college to the NFL, from college to any professional realm, is extraordinary.
Sure.
And very few players are able to dominate their rookie year in any respective professional sport. But it will be exciting, and it will definitely sell tickets.
Yeah, according to Dane Brugler of The Athletic, he power ranked the Cardinals draft class as third behind the Washington Redskins, which we'll get into in a second. Gosh darn it, they killed this draft. And the Buffalo Bills. I agree. Murray is a wild card. He's explosive. He does have a very accurate arm. He has an extremely strong arm for his size, and he's mobile. My only concern is if you're going to take a quarterback, before you can really tell how good a quarterback is going to be, you need two things. You need protection and you need weapons. Well, now Arizona has the weapons, right? I mean, they already had Larry Fitzgerald, who is aging. They have Christian Kirk, explosive wide receiver out of Texas A&M. The weapons that they took in this year's draft at 62, they took Andy Isabella, a little firecracker out of Massachusetts, UMass. Really, really liked him. He's very fast. People say he's going to live in the slot, but my question is, does that mean you bump Christian Kirk outside? I don't think Kirk has the size to play outside, but we'll wait and see there. They take Hakeem Butler at 103, and then they took another wide receiver, Keyshawn Johnson, in the 6th round, and then Caleb Wilson, tight end, was Mr. Irrelevant at 254. So, they already have Ricky Seals-Jones as a good tight end. The Cardinals have weapons, but they did nothing to invest in the protection. And that's what got Josh Rosen killed last year. Rosen was running for his life all 2018 long. So I don't see why the Cardinals didn't go ahead and invest in that infrastructure a little bit more. We saw that with the Cowboys, that if you can build an offensive line that can protect your quarterback and allow your running back to find holes. I mean, they have David Johnson. He was a star 2 seasons ago, a little bit of a down year last year. But to me, that's where it all starts, is up front in the trenches. And Arizona hasn't invested in that yet. So I'm still very, very wary of, Kyler's health, really. There is no correlation between size of a quarterback and injury. The numbers actually indicate the opposite way, that according to the studies, the smaller you are, quote unquote, the less likely you are to get hurt. Now, that's not the finding of the study. That's just to say that the numbers do not support, if you have a 6'6" quarterback with a big frame on him, he's not going to get hurt, versus if you take Kyler, he's going to get squished like a bug. That's not been proven, and that's what a lot of the haters were saying. My question with Kyler was, I don't think he's the complete package at quarterback. I don't think once he gets out of the OU system where everything is a quick read, once he gets out of the OU system where he had 4 out of 5 offensive linemen drafted this year, I just worry that everything's going to break down and he's not going to be what we saw Kyler was in college. But only time will tell. They take Byron Murphy at cornerback there too. I really, really liked the draft that the Cardinals had. But going to the NFC East, and that's where I want to spend the last little bit of this draft talk here. We'll get to the Cowboys in a second, but the Washington Redskins, according to Dane Brugler, killed this draft. They had Dwayne Haskins fall to them mercifully at 15 after the Giants took Daniel Jones at 6 overall. I'm still scratching my head over that. Then they have Montez Sweat at 26 overall. Montez Sweat on a lot of power rankings was a top 10 pick in this draft. He falls to the bottom half of the first round. They get Terry McLaurin out of Ohio State. They get Bryce Love in the 4th round from Stanford. Now, we have to see if he really comes back from injury the way and continues to run the way that he was his junior year at Stanford, where he would have been a first-round pick had he come out. He makes a mistake now. Hindsight's 20/20. Goes back, gets hurt. His draft stock plummets, but still, they take Kelvin Harmon in the 6th round as well. They take Jimmy Moreland, an FCS cornerback who a lot of people are very, very high on, in the 7th round. Washington set themselves up for a lot of success.
I'm looking through this draft, and the obvious A-plus grades are Haskins and Montez Sweat just falling in their lap.
Oh, A++, right?
But they also drafted Bryce Love, great pick. Kelvin Harmon was a 1,000-yard receiver at NC State this year, really good. And then at pick 153, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Ross
Pierschbacher, I believe is how you say it.
He was talked about a lot this year. He's a very solid offensive lineman. I'm not sure his potential to be a long-time starter, but definitely great for depth at offensive line.
Absolutely. But that's what Washington did, was they protected their quarterback. They already have a decent offensive line, but then they go and they spend some value picks to go get depth offensive linemen. That's what the Cardinals really didn't do. They took one offensive lineman.
They took 2 offensive linemen in the 6th and 7th round, and then 4 pass catchers.
Yeah, so how much are those guys going to help you? But to your point, Dwayne Haskins, a really, really solid pick, especially at 15. That is incredible value.
Yeah, and he'll start right away.
Yes, he will. The Redskins have found their quarterback. I think he's going to really push Colt McCoy for that starting quarterback spot, especially because we don't know if Alex Smith will ever play football again.
Yeah, unfortunately, my guess is no.
Yeah. At this point, why would you come back from that, right?
Yeah, and I understand loving the game, but it's not even guaranteed that he can come back.
Right.
I mean, we just saw the Bears tight end retire. I think it was last year after the
Zach Miller.
Yeah, the awful
horrific,
knee injury.
Yeah, against New Orleans.
And he retired after 3 years. And
he almost lost his leg that night.
Yeah,
that's how
and
bad
that was the similar injury to the UCF quarterback.
Mackenzie Milton.
And they've been talking on the phone. So, I mean, these injuries
walked for the first time in 5 months.
These injuries are very serious. It's not a guarantee like, I'll give him a year to recover. That's not at all a guarantee.
I mean, forgive me, it is a little graphic, but when you have your leg mangled, twisted that badly, it cuts off blood supply to your lower leg. And that's what happened to Zach Miller. That's what happened to Mackenzie Milton. It's what happened to
Jalen Smith, the Cowboys.
Yes,
nerve
Jalen
damage.
Smith. You had nerve damage. And Alex Smith actually had infection set in his leg. So when you lose that critical blood supply, you really, really get in some deep trouble there. Going through the rest of the NFC East, I'm scrolling through the power rankings right now. The Eagles end up at 8. They took Andre Dillard, a tackle out of Washington State. I really liked Dillard. I was surprised he fell to 22. And then with 53, they get Miles Sanders, running back out of Penn State. Sanders has some huge fumbling concerns, but he's an efficient runner. He's very powerful. He's not Saquon Barkley, but he's
a classic Eagles running back.
He is. He's a tough-nosed guy. I think if you can get him in your in fantasy, like I'm doing a dynasty league, I think Miles Sanders
very, very good in space.
Good value. I think he's really going to push. I mean, because right now Jordan Howard is the starter in Philly, and he's been dropping off over the last several years. So I think Sanders has
they could
a
split
real
reps
good shot.
Very likely.
Absolutely. So you're in fantasy football, I would definitely consider picking up Miles Sanders. Scrolling, continuing to go down the list, the Giants had a terrible draft, so I know they're going to be at the bottom. The Cowboys, also according to Dane Brugler, didn't draft super well. They fall out of the top 20. I'm just going to search real quick because I can't find them. 31, Dallas Cowboys is where they're listed. Dane did not like Tristan Hill. That was the first pick that the Cowboys took with 58 overall. He really thought they should have gone safety. I did too. Yes, defensive tackle is an area of concern for the Cowboys, but Tristan Hill had a lot of issues with his coaches at UCF. First of all, he wasn't even a starter in his last year there. He was a depth guy. Yeah. He had some attitude concerns. He would get into it with his coaches, but Rod Marinelli really pushed to go get Tristan Hill, and that's who the Cowboys get. They took a guard, Connor McGovern, with their third-round pick, and then some really odd picks. I'll put it that way. They go Tony Pollard, running back out of Memphis. He was the backup to Darnell Henderson. They take him in the 4th round. I don't know why they took him over a guy like Travion Williams, who fell to the 6th round, but that's what they did. Cornerback Michael Jackson, and then 7 picks later, edge rusher Joe Jackson, both out of Miami. They take Donovan Wilson in the 6th round, a safety out of here, Texas A&M, and then running back Mike Weber and edge Jalen Jelks out of Oregon. There's just not a lot of impact that the Cowboys got out of this draft. And, I mean, you don't need a ton of impact. They have most of their depth chart already set. So you're looking for those gems, but, Dane doesn't seem to like him. I wasn't really thrilled with him. Dane lists Tristan Hill as his questionable pick. The only team that had a worse draft, according to Brugler, was the Miami Dolphins, which they reached for Christian Wilkins in the 1st round, and then they took a bunch of no-name guys basically after that.
Yeah.
Looking for the Giants here, if I can find them. The Giants ranked 26th. The questionable pick, according to Dane Brugler, was taking Dexter Lawrence with 17th overall. I would say that your questionable pick has to be Daniel Jones. I mean, you and I talked about that. Neither of us was high on Daniel Jones.
Yeah, Daniel Jones is a safe quarterback that lives with the dink and dunks.
Yeah.
Now, Duke was able to win some games because of him, because Duke was horrible. But also, a 6th-round pick quarterback shouldn't lose 52-7.
Yeah. No,
he's not going to take. He's not an aggressive quarterback. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes, but
he doesn't have a super strong arm.
He's just average.
Yeah.
And for a 6th-round pick, you cannot draft average.
Yeah, I saw someone immediately on Twitter put up, if you haven't seen a picture of Daniel Jones, go Google what he looks like. Someone says he looks like the actor who plays Eli Manning in a movie about Peyton Manning's life. Like, he has this Manning-like quality about him, and he's friends with the Mannings. He's gone to the Manning Passing Academy. He's been a friend, quote-unquote, of David Gettleman for a couple of years now. Gettleman's fallen in love with him. He quite literally could not be any more perfect to fulfill the Eli Manning-esque role.
And if we're going down that route, then we've got 2 more giant Super Bowls in the future with Daniel Jones.
That's very true. The Patriots should be trembling in their boots right now. To wrap this up, give me your thoughts on the Cowboys draft. Are you disappointed? Are you excited about any one guy? What do you think here?
I mean, it's never bad to add depth to the interior defensive line.
Yeah.
But when you have 3 good safeties available at pick 58,
yes,
and safety is an absolute need, you have to draft safety. And then the drafting 3 running backs is unfathomable.
Mind-boggling. Yeah, I don't understand why you passed on Nasir Adderley, you passed on Taylor Rapp, and then you passed on who was the third guy? Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You passed on him in later rounds too. There was just so much safety value right there. We'd been talking about if Taylor Rapp fell to 58, oh my goodness, everyone lose their minds. You're going to go get Taylor Rapp.
Mm-hmm.
If Nasir Adderley was a first-round pick on just about everybody's board out of Delaware, granted he's an FCS guy, but still, he shouldn't have been there. The Cowboys pass on him. They go get Tristan Hill. Let's move on before we get to Stephen McGee very quickly to your NBA quick hitters. Houston has looked terrible in the first 2 games of the second round. I thought it was going to be Houston in 5. It's looking like it's going to be Golden State in 4 if this trend continues. What are your thoughts on the Golden State-Houston game and the rest of the playoffs going on right now?
Yeah, I'll keep this quick. One, James Harden, the foul calls, landing spot, there needs to be more consistency in the offseason. The ref should revisit that. But also, he shoots the ball completely different when he's doing step backs and creating distance. So he's kicking his legs out, which is not a foul. Mm-hmm. I'm all for calling offensive fouls for unnecessary offensive kicking legs out, trying to draw contact. He has a certain genius about it because he tries to get other players in foul trouble. Steph Curry has been in foul trouble both games of the series. I could see I can see Houston winning 1 game. Yeah. I think Warriors in 5. I'm a little worried about Milwaukee because Boston
that first game was bad.
Destroyed them game 1, but then Milwaukee came back, dominated game 2 purely because Chris Middleton was 7-10 from 3. That's not sustainable. No. So I'm a little worried about my pick for Milwaukee to get out of the Eastern Conference. But I'll still hold on to Golden State Milwaukee, but I'm not confident in Milwaukee.
Well, and that's what I have coming out too. You're picking Golden State, I'm picking Milwaukee. Coming into the playoffs, I was really confident. I thought, Golden State's going to get bounced in the second round. Houston's going to mop the floor with them. It'll be Houston-Milwaukee. Houston once again is wetting the bed. This time they have CP3. They have no excuse other than James Harden crying wolf about fouls.
Yeah.
Houston's looked terrible. And yeah, like you said, the East is a little bit up for grabs right now. Philly, even that series as well. After a terrible game 1, they bounced back. And then Milwaukee and Boston kind of trade shellackings in games 1 and 2. It's going to be interesting to see going forward for sure. But yeah, you and I are definitely clinging to Golden State, Milwaukee, and obviously have different outcomes coming out of there. All right, well, that will do it for the first segment of this podcast. The Dallas Stars do play Game 4 tonight against the St. Louis Blues. Stars need to get a big win in their own building to even up the series before they go back to St. Louis. Just a critical Game 4 for the Dallas Stars. Ben Bishop needs to really step up there. Coming up next, we have one of the biggest interviews that we've ever done. Former Texas A&M and former Dallas Cowboys quarterback Stephen McGee is on the other side. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to episode 37 of Double Coverage Sports Talk, presented by Elevated Sports, and we have Stephen McGee, former Texas A&M and Dallas Cowboys quarterback, here with us. Stephen, thank you so much for a little bit of your time and coming on the show with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Who's Gumby's Pizza keychain.
That would be your redheaded friend right there. For free, they handed it out last year, so I had to cop one.
It has nothing to do with frequent flyer rewards for your pizza roll.
I wish it worked like that. Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, Stephen, a big week for NFL fans everywhere as the draft was just this past weekend. We wanted to sit down and get your thoughts initially, first on the draft kind of overall, and then looking specifically at the Dallas Cowboys draft as obviously a former draft pick yourself. When you look at a guy like Kyler Murray going number 1 overall, are you in favor of that move, or what do you see there?
I think it's an interesting move. It's a gutsy move, but the NFL moves so quickly now from draft picks that it doesn't scare me. I think Cliff Kingsbury probably knows he has a short leash. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can have 2 rough seasons in Arizona and survive. So might as well go all in with a guy that you want to be your quarterback and a guy that fits your system and you know whose skill set worked in college game. My biggest argument against guys like Kyler Murray at the quarterback position in the NFL is that they've never worked before. Yeah. There's never been one good quarterback with that skill set in the NFL as far as a guy that you can build your program around. So can he stay healthy? Can that offense work in the NFL? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's going to be boom or bust. That's what's so intriguing about the storyline. He didn't get rave reviews about Josh Rosen. Great. Cut bait in year 1. That's a hard decision to make. And so I respect the fact that they were able to do that.
In your mind, what's the difference between guys like Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray?
Yeah, I think Russell Wilson is a guy that can win from the pocket consistently, that's shown that. And most important is underneath center. You know, he can run all the hard play pass stuff and be a pro formation quarterback. I've never seen Kyler Murray get under center in his entire career.
Right.
Can he do that? I don't know. And I think Russell Wilson has an absolute howitzer of an arm. Kyler Murray has a good arm. I don't think it's an elite arm. Russell Wilson probably has one of the strongest arms in the NFL. So there's a big difference there. They both throw well on the run, definitely. Yeah, in fact, I think Russell Wilson almost throws better at times rolling out of the pocket than he does inside the pocket. A really unique skill set. I know on the flip side that Kyler's probably more athletic than Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. Russell Wilson's been able to stay healthy. Can Kyler Murray do that too? Being that more of his game relies on his legs than, in my opinion, it does for Russell Wilson.
Yeah. Continuing on the quarterback trend, let's talk about pick 6. Daniel Jones.
He's going to be throwing a lot of pick 6s.
Can you like the pick as a Giants fan? Are people being too hard on the pick, or is it really that bad?
I feel bad for Daniel Jones. Maybe he deserves to be in the first round. I don't really know. I didn't watch a lot of his game tape, but it seems like he would have been available later at one of their other 2 picks. I think teams get really scared that the guy they want to draft is not going to be available at the quarterback position. I think you can live with it if it's a safety or a defensive tackle. But when you're talking about the most important position in sports and teams convince themselves that Joe Smith is their guy, they have to have Joe Smith. He fits his skill set and his demeanor, his leadership qualities, fits the organization and program. They go all in, and I think they got scared. Quite frankly, I think they made a bad business decision because they could have got a really good football player at pick 6 and then got probably him or another good quarterback later in the draft.
Right. You look at a guy like Josh Allen who goes 1 pick later to the Jaguars, a pass rusher. I mean, the Raiders passed on him at 4 a lot. He had a lot of comps to Khalil Mack, a poor man's Khalil Mack, but the comps were there. Gettleman came out and said afterwards that he had heard rumors 2 other teams were interested in Daniel Jones before pick 17. But
they always say that.
Those owners are geniuses.
Exactly.
Just
at the same time,
messing with their heads.
Because you look at a team like Denver, and that's where I want to go in just a second. They took Drew Lock. A lot of people had them taking him at 10. They take him at 52, I believe, in the second round. How as a fan base do you kind of come to terms with taking a guy who was not excellent in college, right? It's one thing if you take an excellent college quarterback early and then he fails. But how do you rationalize taking a guy as a franchise quarterback who doesn't even have really, really elite college tape?
Well, I think you have to think of it in the NBA terms. You see a lot of guys that go number 1 overall in the NBA draft. DeAndre Jordan, for instance, who was really a 6th man at Texas A&M. And it's hard to fathom how a guy like DeAndre Jordan could be a 6th man at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
But he was, number 1, 2, 3, I don't know, whatever, pick. And I think in the same way, they try to correlate a skill set that will fit the NFL game or the NFL mold. I think that's what you're doing here. Now, obviously at the quarterback position, production does matter in college, so it's not, a perfect illustration here with basketball. But, I think it's also, you got to be careful when you say the guy wasn't a good player, or these guys are not all in the same situation.
Sure.
Let's take Oklahoma or Alabama, for instance. Generally, when they line up on Saturday afternoon, their team is an overwhelming favorite and should be from positions A to Z. I was on the bad team in college. We didn't have a single guy on our roster. We had probably 3 or 4 guys that could have started on a team like Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. The rest of our guys would have been scout teamers at Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. That's not a fair matchup on Sunday. So, we should have gotten our teeth beat in. Same deal with Duke. It's hard for me to say, well, this kid, no, it's not the Big 12 or the SEC, but, he probably wasn't lining up with the most talented guys around him. So that's one thing. So I think you see a lot about how the guy handles that adversity. Mm-hmm. But do you still want to see him make plays? Absolutely. You still got to see the flash. You still got to. And so I think from a production standpoint, it's this fine line of you want to see wins because you don't want a loser.
Right.
But then you also understand, like Jay Cutler at Vanderbilt, that you're not going to be a 10 or 12 team quarterback. Sure. This guy probably just went under the radar coming out of high school.
Yeah, and to your point, Duke wide receivers dropped over 9% of their passes last year, which is among the worst receiving rate in FBS. So you're right. He didn't have a lot of weapons around him to be able to support him. It's just kind of a guessing game at this point, I think, for Giants fans. Do you have a proven winner, or do you have kind of an enigma on your team right now?
My question, a little on a tangent here, is Daniel Jones is going to be groomed to be the next Eli Manning. You played in the same division as Eli Manning. What do you make of all the hatred in the end of his career right now? Because it's such a roller coaster.
It is. Sometimes it's good to be a Manning, and I think that name alone can get you a few extra years in the NFL. Mm-hmm. He's definitely had some good moments. Now, you go back to when they won Super Bowls, the Giants' defense was phenomenal. Their pass rush was unbelievable. That's back when, what's his name, had 10 fingers.
Jason Pierre-Paul?
Yeah.
Wow. Shots
then
fired.
They also had Tuck and
Justin Tuck. And
yeah,
absolutely.
You're right.
They had some really, really good D-lines. Them and actually the Eagles. And so, a lot of times quarterbacks get way too much credit and way too much blame, if things go good or bad. And so maybe Eli was the fortunate benefactor of getting way too much praise when they were winning some games. I think he's always been a solid NFL quarterback. I don't think he's ever been an elite NFL quarterback. And I think now on the back end of his career, his play's probably fallen off even from where it was, certainly. But being a part of some bad teams and you're the quarterback or the head coach, you're going to probably take some unfair criticism. And it's just the nature of the position. He gets compensated well enough to handle that.
He absolutely does. But he is going to the New York media, which is, among the most brutal on this planet, right? So we're going to have to see how he handles that media storm. Let's go ahead and look at the Dallas Cowboys. What did you think about pick 58 taking Tristan Hill? I don't know how much you know about him, but a guy that was not a starter in his last year at UCF, a guy who had issues with his coaches there. You have a glaring need at safety, and you pass on that. Give us your kind of rundown on the Cowboys draft.
This is a hard one for me because I don't know the guy. I didn't watch any UCF games, and so you would think that when you're playing at least 2 guys at that position on every snap, and there's a heavy rotation of guys coming in and out, that at a school like UCF, the guy you're drafting in the second round should be probably a 3 or 4 year starter.
Yeah.
So that's concerning. It's never a good thing when you have off the field issues like the kid at Houston who was really talented that went top 10, Ed Oliver. Those they can try to dismiss it and try to, oh, we're better people now for it and all that stuff. But I just don't really ever see the stripes on the zebra change a whole lot once they get in the house.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you become a Dallas Cowboy, there's almost this sense of, I really can't do wrong now. And I have this little bit of entitlement compared to some of the other franchises that are a little more under the radar. And so that can kind of be an issue. And I think you've seen a lot of Cowboys struggle with that in the past with off-the-field issues. So that's always a concern for me. Heck, they obviously saw something. He's probably an incredibly talented player, but I think it's a really struggle for GMs and coaches when you're drafting the first 2 rounds. Do you draft off best available or do you draft off need?
Mm-hmm.
That I can sit here now and say, well, yeah, they needed safety. It makes a lot of sense. This guy wasn't a starter, but do you really trust your board and the guys that you have on your staff? They have umpteen thousand of them. Evaluating these guys and the processes they put in place to make good decisions in a moment's notice. That's not difficult. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do, but heck, we don't know.
Right.
Fast forward.
And I mean, Will McClay has done a great job over the last several seasons drafting, right? I mean, in general, the Cowboys have drafted pretty consistently. I think the only bust that you would say in the first round is Taco Charlton. He just wasn't, he's not a good football player.
Was Claiborne a first round pick?
Well, yes. Maurice Claiborne, when we traded up to get him in, what year was that?
They said he was going to be the best corner since Deion Sanders.
Yeah, that didn't happen exactly. So, yes, that was an absolute swing and a miss.
Yeah.
But recently, since McClay has been there, and I don't remember what year McClay kind of stepped into that role, Taco's really the only whiff on that. Moving to your kind of personal experience, you were drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in
Is that considered a whiff?
No, that's not where I'm going with this.
Hey, looking at the stats, no career interceptions, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, let me be very. That was a bad segue.
That's pretty efficient right there.
Take us through what it's like being selected. You were selected 101st overall. What is that like sitting? Did you have your draft party at home? Where were you on draft day?
There's no draft party for me. I couldn't have had anybody show up probably, but I was back here on Hereford Street in a rent house, and my mom and dad were in town, and so it's actually pretty stressful. I think every draft pick thinks they're going to go earlier than what they actually do.
Sure.
And so, I thought I was going to go in the 3rd round, and then here comes the 4th, and fortunately, Cowboys traded up there and because I really thought I was going to go to Denver or New England, and sure enough, man, it worked out awesome for me.
Yeah.
Get the phone call. First call was actually a drop call.
Oh no!
Yeah, it's like and no team will. Well, they say is there's never draft a guy that doesn't answer the call on draft day type of a deal, and it was a Dallas area code, and then it was 817 I think is at Dallas, and then 214.
Yeah,
and the next one was Jerry on the other end. So
gosh, your hands just shaking.
Yeah, how did that sound hearing Jerry Jones come over the phone there?
It was hard to believe, and actually I'll never forget, he told me, he said, we had spoken in the draft process, spent about an hour, and of course I was talking about hunting, and he's like, I got to place the King Ranch, and so he says, hey, how about we go down to the King Ranch sometime and go hunting? I was like, man, this is getting better.
Oh man, that is incredible.
Never happened.
Oh no. Come on, Jerry.
And maybe that audio is somewhere, and we could hold it against him.
There you go.
I want to hear your Jerry impersonation, honestly, with Jerry coming over the phone to a young
Stephen.
Yep.
What do you think about being a Dallas football Cowboy? That's all I got.
Oh man, that was awesome right there.
How much weight was put into your combine? Like, I've always been curious about that. Like, how do you look at someone's tape, and then a combine can change everything?
See, I think that's another struggle they have, and I think that's where people can probably make draft mistakes. And the guy shows up and just wows them in interviews, wows them on the field, in one-on-ones, wows them physically, 40s, bench press, all those, the numbers game. But then you turn the tape on, the guy kind of disappears, right? He just kind of becomes a part of the picture. And you really want the guy to flash. And so, they always say you gotta make sure that you're accounting what you're seeing in the combine with going back on the tape before you fall in love with the guy and make sure he's making plays. And so, that's I think some guys just get wowed at the skill set and say, hey man, I can develop that football player. Or this guy wasn't played correctly in college, played out of position, or wasn't in an offense that fit his skill set, but in our offense, we can change him. And I think that's a scary, yes, that can happen, but it's scary to hang your hat on that belief too, Right. I think Siri wants to
try to get into
Siri wants to interject in that conversation. Luke, you had a question about his college decision.
Yeah, so I kind of want to flash back a little bit, kind of doing a little creeping on articles written about you.
It's called research.
Research, of course. Known as a passer in high school, big-time passing quarterback, but then go to Texas A&M with a completely different offense you were very successful in. Why did you choose A&M?
It's a good question. I'm not really, I loved A&M. I think there's always this belief too, kind of what we were just speaking on, that somebody's going to change their stripes, so to speak, and fit the offense to the players and the skill sets. And so I was 18 years old or 17 years old, didn't really know what I didn't know about offenses and football. Heck, we just dropped back and threw it deep every play in high school. And so, I obviously knew that there was a run history with Franchione, but I also believe this message of that we're going to be able to design the offense to throw and, really feature the guy playing the position. And so that's what I went on, And I think, though, it's important for all future recruits to definitely look at what's this guy comfortable doing, because when they get their back against the wall, they're going to go to what they know. And so, if they're a pro style guy, they're going to be a pro style guy. Spread, option.
Yeah, you were able to throw deep because you had a monster in Jordan Shipley.
He was a monster.
His brother went to my high school for like a year. His dad was coach at Coppell for a year, I think.
That's right. Yeah,
Jackson. And then he also played at Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's actually where I wanted to go next. Was you come into A&M, obviously we're still playing Texas at this point. I grew up rooting against you, to be perfectly honest. When I was a wee lad, Texas was always on TV. Orange was, for whatever reason, my favorite color. So I distinctly remember both of your wins against Texas and going, oh my goodness, this Stephen McGee guy is ruining my day. What was it like to pull off a couple of those wins against the Longhorns, especially now that we don't have that rivalry anymore? Has that memory sweetened anymore? Or?
And how quick does Texas hatred enter you after being at A&M? Is that like a quick process?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever been a absolute Texas hater. I think my most dislike for Texas roots in the reality that they're so arrogant. It drives me crazy. And I really, after coming to A&M, I've started to feel that and sense that more. Just being around the average fan even was almost annoying. They have this sense of we're better, we deserve whatever more than the average person. And it really comes across strong around the players as well. And so it's always fun to beat them.
Yeah,
definitely. I'd be lying if I said it was just, another win. It definitely wasn't. I grew up in Burnett, which is the backyard of Austin, and all the people in our neighborhood had the huge Longhorn stickers, the ones that took up the whole back window. And you're sitting there like, who in the right mind would put that on the card? So then you get to talking to the people like, hey, what year did you go to Texas? Of course they didn't.
Ooh,
they're just bandwagons.
Yeah.
So that's always annoying too.
Right.
So yeah, it was definitely sweet to go in there. And of course, they were a lot better than we were both years. Yeah. And then my freshman year, first ever start, they won the national championship, and we almost beat them that day. Of course, almost doesn't count, but that would have been probably the sweetest win ever. Knowing what we know now,
right?
If that could have kept them from a national championship, that would have been great.
Yeah, sure.
But
absolutely crazy to think that was about as excited as I think I can be over a sporting event growing up, and then to be here all these years later, talking to a man that beat Texas and go, wow, what was I thinking? Thank goodness for maturity.
I still owe someone $5 on that game.
You what?
I stole someone, Matt Allred. If you're listening to this, I owe you $5 from a bet in elementary school, however old I was. I bet on USC to beat Texas.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm team conspiracy.
Bet the whole piggy bank is empty.
Oh yeah, I've been collecting. I'm team conspiracy. Vince Young's knee was down on one of the touchdowns, but that's another day. Would love to change it up a little bit, talk about your faith a little bit, because that's part of this podcast. I guess to give context, like what was your upbringing like, and were you rooted in Christianity, or was that something you developed later, or what was that like?
Yeah, so my dad was coach for me, and then retired from coach and became Pastor McGee. And so I've grown up in and around the church for as long as I can remember. We were the what do you call it? The 3-day weekers. We were the Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday.
Oh yeah,
Wednesday night people loading up in the van, making the trek out to Buchanan Dams, Chapel of the Hills Baptist Church. Man, still there.
Come on,
it's still there, folks. Highway 29. On your way to get your Cooper's barbecue, you stop in. So yeah, I think and then my granddad is certainly a huge influence in my life. He is very differently. My dad, very outspoken in his faith, but my granddad, more of an action guy, and really just been a servant heart, served the church well, served his family well, and I think has lived out his testimony very loudly. And I think that those two guys have had a huge impact in my life, and certainly in my faith, and becoming a believer. And still to this day, just seeing the way they live has been a big encouragement to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Being the stud athlete that you were, coming to A&M, being drafted by the
ever
Cowboys.
Was that guy.
We're going to roll with it for right now, considering you had a lot more success than either of us did. How do you balance being the starting quarterback for Texas A&M, being a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and your faith? Because like you talked about earlier, with the pressure that comes with that, especially the star on the side of your helmet, guys lose their way. And you've seen a lot of different college athletes come in, get out from under their parents' supervision, and just kind of fall off the deep end. How did you maintain your faith and maintain kind of this starting football persona?
Yeah, I think not always well. By no means I ever had it figured out, and still don't. It's still a challenge for me. I think sport is a great gift, but it's also can rob you of a true identity. And I think people start to believe that who you are is tied to what you do or don't do on a football field, and that is a scary cliff to live on, because it can really rob you of a lot of life. And for me, that was very similar. I put so much weight on making the team, being successful on the field, carrying the weight of the team, and winning and losing football games, and the pressure of a fan base that's upset or happy, and vice versa. So that can be a real struggle for athletes, because of how much emphasis society puts on and importance they put on, whether you are or you aren't, as being a quarterback. And so instead of being a follower of Jesus Christ, you're viewed as a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And man, that quarterback thing's really sweet while it lasts, but I'm living testimony. That's short. And so, that's a thief if you allow it to be, and can really rob you of a true joy. My job title can change a million times over, but your belief and your walk with Jesus doesn't. That's the steadfast rock in your life. And I think it's easy to sit here and say that, but when you put the star on your helmet and there's so much pressure, and even as a third string quarterback, I was in the paper and I had the pressure, and you're still making money, and it's hard. And we just put so much emphasis on job and career and doing and accomplishing, and yet we don't have to carry that weight.
Right. Were there any players, I guess two-part question, who are some players on the Cowboys or A&M that were like-minded and helped keep you centered? And also, how much influence does like a team chaplain have?
Yeah, team chaplains have a huge influence. We we had this guy named Tony Evans. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
just an average Joe as a team chaplain. That guy was incredible. I think, and then also, so Tony was there for, game weekends, and then we went to church at the Village, and so Matt Chandler was up there dividing the word. So those are some pretty average guys to take the pulpit, man. Just like you and me, just average Joes.
Yeah, of course.
So that, I think those guys, and just having pastors walk with you, and I was blessed to have that in Dallas, and just kind of refocus, right? Constantly trying to refocus and on the word and the things that matter, that have an eternal value, and not get so caught up in the temporary. So I think chaplains, yes, have a huge role in any level. But then, these pastors that you've probably never heard of that really are great shepherds that pour into your life the most. And I think, go to lunch with you, walk with you, go play golf with you, just hang out with you, just do life with you. And I think that's where you have the most kind of the best seed. Did I use that term right?
Yeah.
Sow the best seed.
Yeah.
Water. So reap.
Reap. Are we reaping or are we sowing? Sow the seed from the
I
harvest.
You reap the harvest.
Yeah,
You reap the
so
harvest
I think
from
the
sowing the
pastors,
seed.
The pastors are sowing the seeds, right? So
Yeah.
that eventually that grows, and then
You
you
reap the harvest.
And ultimately, Jesus
Yes.
sowed the ultimate seed, and then we reap the harvest.
How are we at
Or maybe
A&M and we don't have our agricultural terms down?
I feel like I'm being careful not to blaspheme here, by sowing and reaping.
Yeah.
Were you even in a more minority going to the NFL being a Christian? Like, was it even a bigger leap? Because I'm sure there are more believers at the college level. Or is it pretty much the same?
I felt like the characteristics of the locker room carried over pretty consistent. There's a lot of really good guys.
Yeah.
But being a good guy and being a believer are two different things, right? And so, people ask all the time. It's probably the most common question you get is, what was so-and-so like? There's maybe one or two guys that you play with in the NFL locker room that you're like, man, that guy was a jerk. Most guys are awesome. I mean, they're really good guys, but they just make bad decisions, right? They believe the lie of the world. And so we're all susceptible to that. And so, man, it's sad that you see that. I mean, the locker next to me was a different guy. My second year was a different guy every week. And sometimes it was because they, made a bad decision. Sometimes it's just, they didn't make the team. But, I think that I don't think that the money or the job title really changed whether or not there was a lot of believers on the team.
Were there any other big time players that were believers, or maybe players that people don't realize were a Christian?
Yeah, I saw, Romo really grow in his faith. First year there, not so much, in my opinion. Now, again, I'm not one to judge another man's where they stand in their faith, but I always saw a lot of redeeming qualities in his life, and I think as then he got married, and then he has kids, and all of these things happened, and he got plugged in with Chandler, and really got diving in with some pastors and just people speaking truth to him. I saw a lot of growth in his life. And I don't know if people really see that from the public eye as much because he's not as outwardly spoken in general about anything other than football. And Witten is a guy that I really respected a lot, that, not just as a football player, but away from it as a father. And he really lived his life on and off the field and in his faith as well. So there really were some good dudes up there, and some guys that would encourage you. John Kitno's another guy. We always had an interesting relationship because we're kind of competing for the same job, and so he was kind of hard on me. But he's a strong believer and a really good guy. And now he's back with them as a coach.
Yeah, I was hoping he was going to be the OC. over
Kellen
Moore.
Kellen. Yeah, you mentioned John Kitna. He's in Kingdom Men Rising, which is a movie that has like Tony Evans and Tony Dungy in it that just came out, speaking very openly about his faith. And I know a couple of people that have gone to see it and really, really loved it. So it's awesome to hear that, you know, a guy like John Kitna isn't just looking back over his life and saying, okay, here's what I believe. It's something that he lived out in the locker room. Even to a guy like you, who you guys are competing for the same job, and yet, you know, at the end of the day, you're both children of God, right?
Yeah.
So that is awesome to hear.
He's a stud. He really was. He's always really close with Tony Evans. And Kitna he's a funny cat too, man. He's one of those Washington State guys, you know. And so he's from Tacoma, the Tacoma aroma. They have a paper mill plant up there, and it stunk apparently. And so I like to remind of this whenever I had the opportunity to speak in the quarterback room, which wasn't often. So generally it was him, you know, kind of delivering the blows. But we had some good times in that room.
Well, that's awesome. What would be one thing that you would, I guess, suggest to especially college level kids, whether you're coming into college or, you know, even guys like us? I'm graduating. Luke is, you know, getting close to that. What would be kind of your...
You only got, what, 5 years left?
Hey, us redheads are smarter than you think.
Depends on how many rounds of golf you play your senior year, right?
Hopefully a lot.
What would be kind of one crucial piece of advice that you would give to a college age male, especially, that's looking to take on more of a leadership role as they mature in their faith?
That's a great question, and I always feel like I'm not really one to give advice. I think through my own failures, though, I think it's just trying to grab onto things that will last, relationships that'll last, that are rooted in something more than just a temporary satisfaction or joy, or happiness, not joy. I think that there's this temptation to, just seek something to make you happy today, and whether it's a job or relationship or all those types of things. And the older I get and the more hair I lose, I realize that really there's no amount of money that'll ever make you happy enough. So it's really not that. It's not really the job title. I've been anywhere from a janitor up to an NFL quarterback, so I've had every job title in between. Like, that doesn't really make you happy. But I think it's those relationships with being, for me, my wife. That's I think an incredible gift. Yeah. But it can be incredible curse too if you make them mad. Yeah. You get the wrong one. So get the right one.
Sage advice. Let me jot that down.
Yeah. But then I think those relationships too that you guys have, like, your friendships today, and just maintaining those things, and guys that can pour into your life and encourage you, and iron sharpens iron. And I think that there's some great wisdom to be had from people that are probably in your life currently that been down the road before, and that can just share their life story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that a terrible answer?
No, that was great.
Did I go all over?
No, absolutely not.
All around the world with that?
Summing it down, relationships, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, no.
Seek people out that can give you wisdom, pour into you.
It's great advice, and I mean, something that we need to hear, right, as young guys, that there isn't one just correct answer other than follow Jesus, right? Obey Jesus. But to hear your experience, and to hear that, look, relationships are a big deal. Take care of them. That's something that, as you and I get busier, that can be tougher to maintain. And as hard as Luke tries to run away from me, I'm not going to let this friendship die. Just kidding. But no, I think that is...
Did we just become best friends? Yeah. I feel like that was the next line there.
That is really sage advice, and I appreciate that.
This probably, we could do a whole podcast on this, but my question is, how did getting married challenge / open your eyes to a new aspect on your faith? Because, I mean, Mitch has a girlfriend. I'm still rocking the bachelor life, so I have time to prepare for marriage. But I guess, how has it challenged your faith? or opened your eyes to something new?
I think it opened my eyes to how selfish I was and how everything in my world centered on me. And you get married, and all of a sudden it changes the game. And then you also get this burden I've never had before, and it's this burden of not only feeling the need to, but the want to provide and take care of someone you didn't previously have. I think marriage is a struggle. Anybody tells you that it's not is lying. And I'm married to an incredible woman. She is an absolute gift from God. I love her incredibly. But man, it is, especially early years in marriage. I think the further I get along, and the more I look back on, I'm like, man, I was a jerk. I was just focused on me. Like I wasn't being, loving this woman well, and that's. It almost like makes me mad at my old, but it's also a joy knowing that, God's brought me from that. He's opened my eyes to how I can be a better man. I think it's helped me in obviously my relationship with my wife, but also other relationships. Man, like my wife finally called me out on something, but I didn't have, she knows me better than anybody else in the world. So now all of a sudden it's like, man, I'm doing that in other relationships. And so, I think having a godly woman there to encourage you, and when I got cut, who was my biggest cheerleader? She's obviously an incredible. And I don't want to start getting choked up on air in front of you guys, but she's an incredible woman and been an incredible blessing for me.
No, it's fantastic to hear. I think great advice, and it's authentic. It's very clear that that's exactly what you're speaking from the heart. And, for us, for any of our listeners and for us, that just means...
Oh, my heart's over here.
That means
not the right side.
Luke maybe held
Something
back
about
from
redhead
his anatomy class.
I didn't give a lot of credibility to my previous statement about redhead intelligence.
You're amazing.
Sorry to ruin your moment there, Mitch.
We'll let that slide. Yeah, that's okay. I think this has been a fantastic podcast. And I mean, Stephen, this has been an incredible honor for both of us. I know Luke has a little bit more interaction with you here because he works on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But, from a guy who's watched you play and now get to interact with you and hear about your faith, this has been a tremendous honor for me. And I'm just really, really thankful for the time that you've given us.
Thank you guys for your time. This has been an incredible honor for me.
Awesome.
Finally made the double coverage cast. I've arrived.
You are on a very short list of guys that have been on the show. I will say that. So
maybe Steven's the jump start for that list.
Maybe
Before you leave town, we need to go across the street here and get a couple rounds in. I didn't know y'all were such golfers.
Well, Luke is. I have the itch. That's pretty much where I'll draw the line.
I've been forcefully bitten by the golf bug for a few years now, and I love it.
I mean, I'm down.
There's no going back.
But be prepared to just mock openly because my mid game is not very good. But,
hey,
you play a lot though, right?
I play a lot, but I still goof. I don't golf. No.
You goof, not golf.
That's right.
I like
I'm
that.
gonna steal that.
I go out for a good time. I like to drink a cold beer.
Yeah.
I like to hang out, listen to music, and I like to feel okay if I'm 3 fairways over. And at A&M, you still got a shot.
Became my hero. Oh my goodness.
But if you go to Briarcrest, which you don't play with the
high and tight.
the low end Briarcrest. You're over at Miramont Traditions. For us poor men,
that could be even further from the truth. I live at Briarcrest or A&M for the same reason you do. It's $20 on Golf Now, right?
Golf Now, that is
with a cart.
Yeah, but Briarcrest is Tree City. They got plant happy. But yeah, campus course. I mean, the only thing is I think it's 17. If you hit one 10 yards left, you're hitting a windshield. So for my ball flight, I'm fine because I hit a slice
high and tight to the right. Oh
yeah.
My God. Yeah, if I ever played around at Briarcrest, you would find an entire set of Pro V1s, probably on hole 1 in the trees.
Pro V1s.
Well, okay. You told me
I'm sticking with the $20 Pinnacles. 4 sleeves of
wasn't
Pinnacle
it
golf
you-
balls,
wasn't
knowing
it-
I'll lose a few.
Wasn't it you that told me you could go to Academy and get the recycled Pro V1s for like 25
Okay,
bucks?
yeah.
That's
The
what I did.
refurb. Okay, I thought you meant
not,
brand new
not
ones.
brand new.
Oh yeah,
No.
the refurbs.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
are good
those
too.
are fine. I'm just
Hey,
trying to
they
hit it
have
straight.
Pro V1 on the ball. I can still call them that. Right?
If you'll invest in this is free wisdom.
Okay.
Just if you want to get out your notepads.
Keyboard ready.
Invest in this club, and it extends to about 10 feet long. I've not bought a golf ball since I've owned that thing.
Really?
And if you go to play tournament golf ever, you get invited to go to, like, let's say Merrimont, it's gold mine, because you have all these old men that buy these brand new Pro Vs from the shop.
Yeah. Yep.
And it goes a couple inches into the thick stuff, and they give up on it, right?
Yeah.
Man, that club saves the day.
Here's your
Got a
problem, Steven.
full bag of
You
balls.
have to be able to find the ball to save it, and that's my problem. Let's just say that Schulte Roofing really needs to open up in Biloxi, Mississippi, because I digged a couple of roofs this last weekend. Maybe we can get them as a sponsor after that. Just let me hit a couple golf balls, and they'll come on the show.
That's right.
Schulte Roofing. I love it.
But yeah, I think
All right, fair enough. Well, if you're in the chimney, but somebody else went in the creek, you're not really finding your ball. You're finding our ball
That's right.
that we paid
Oh,
for.
so that's why I come along.
See?
That's what it is.
So it
I'm
really
just your
keeps-
caddy.
It keeps your cost per round down, which is good.
I like that.
Oh.
See, this is why he landed a big time finance job. This is why he's a business mogul.
Yeah.
Because he just talked about cutting costs when we're just talking about the pleasure of golf. And you
kidding.
automatically went business.
I'm going to
side of
go
it.
back and listen to this podcast and just take notes.
Cost per pleasure of round, let's say. So it just takes you up a little bit.
That's
more,
right.
Right?
That will end up in the Wall Street Journal. That quote
there
from
it is.
Double Coverage Sports
Yeah.
Talk.
Oh my goodness. This is our break.
Last question.
Yes.
If you go out and let's say it gets a little hot and you play 15 holes, isn't it infinitely more fun if you paid $18 for that round of golf as opposed to 90? Like if you wanted to call it up after 15 holes, if you paid $90, you're going to fight through the last 3, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, you have to. But when you're in it, you know what? It's not been my day. I'm ready to call it up. The storm's blowing in. I want to get my bag off the cart,
Yeah.
right? Or even if you played a full 18, it doesn't matter.
You feel
Infinitely more fun.
You feel. I agree 100%. I'm all for cheap golf.
Yeah.
I'm all for cutting costs because I just want to play.
Exactly.
I don't care if the greens are double tiered or the fairway rolling fairways. If I've got grass in a pin and a club and a ball,
All about the fellowshipping.
Yeah.
All about the fellowshipping.
it's great. I like that advice. We're like-minded here.
Good. Well, I mean, that's why we had him on the show, right? We just
That's
knew instantly, oh, Steven's going to say exactly what we want him to say.
That's right.
About cutting costs and give us free financial advice. No, but man, I think that's going to do it for episode 37. Steven, thank you so much for coming
Thank y'all.
on and spending part of your time with us. Former Texas A&M and Dallas Cowboys quarterback Stephen McGee on episode 37 of Double Covered Sports Talk. And for myself and Luke Heaton, the final time that we'll be recording here in the TexAg studios. It's been a blast. We'll keep the podcast going from here on out. I've just got to do a little bit of tech wizardry once I get set up in Dallas, and we'll figure that all out. So we will be taking just a little bit of a break from our regularly scheduled one podcast per week, but pay attention to our Twitters and to the show on iTunes as well, and we'll send updates and figure out when our next show is. But that's going to do it for episode 37 for myself, Mitch Mason, Luke Heaton, Stephen McGee. Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, y'all take it easy, and we'll talk to you later.